Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Still with you here and our coverage of the latest summit for the new Global Financial Pact being held in Paris in attendance of President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. Today, we saw the closing session of the summit, and the French president who is holding the summit in Paris was speaking about 40 or more leaders coming from all around the world, including almost 24 from Africa. Also, the Chinese Prime Minister was in attendance, as well as the Brazilian President, all gathered in Paris to give impetus to a new global financial agenda. We're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest, Dr. Mostafa Tamam, Professor of Economy and Political Science. Dr. Mostafa, very good afternoon to you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us, Doctor. And today, of course, in the closing session of the summit, we saw, addresses by many leaders, including President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who spoke about the need for more to be done, for more support to be given to African countries to face the consequences of climate change. And the president said that during the coronavirus pandemic, the world very quickly came together to face the pandemic and was very efficient. And the climate crisis or climate change crisis is a global problem as well, which needs to be addressed with the same urgency. How do you see the president's address in the closing session of the summit today, Doctor?
Certainly, this is not the first time, probably, that the president gives a lot of emphasis to this subject. You remember last November we had the COP27 conference, which was hosted here in Egypt and had a lot of recommendations. Also, on the other side, Egypt gives a lot of thrust and importance to Africa, not only in the climate arena, in other aspects also. You remember that we had the African Development Bank conference, which took place since 4 or 5 days ago, and was certainly enhanced with upgrading the African countries in various aspects, not only in financial aspects. So certainly this is not the first time that the president gives a lot of thrust for improving the situation in African countries. Certainly African countries lack a lot of probably elements. First one, they lack the technology, and they don't have professional human resources. They also do not have the know-how which enables them to upgrade their economy and their country. So certainly this was an important initiative that the president took also with the French president in order to elevate the African countries.
Yes, absolutely. And the French President Emmanuel Macron said today that there have been wealthy nations have finalized over $100 billion in climate finance pledges to develop countries, as well as an expected unlocking of an additional $200 billion in lending for developed countries to face this crisis. How important do you see these steps with regards to addressing the pledges made by the developed countries and actually fulfilling them to enable developing countries to face consequences of climate change, Doctor?
Well, these steps are very, very important, certainly, and they will give a lot of thrust in order to elevate the African countries. But however, as I mentioned before, that what is important is also providing technical support in the areas of probably providing know-how and upgrading the human resources, because probably the problem there, you see, with the African countries is lack of human resources, and lack of the education and the health system. You see, here in Egypt, the president gave a lot of emphasis and thrust in order to upgrade the education and the health system. Certainly these models could be a role model that could be applied in other African countries which probably suffer from the same problems.
Right. Dr. Mostafa, earlier President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron, and Macron expressed his country's appreciation for the deep relations binding Egypt and France. and the French leader also stressed France's keenness on continuing consultations and coordination with Egypt as one of its key regional partners, hailing the Egyptian vital role in maintaining peace and stability in the Middle East region. This is very important, especially with regards to the development of ties between Egypt and France. How do you see the importance of President Sisi's visit and attendance of this summit in developing further economic ties between the two countries?
Well, certainly this is a very important question that you raised. Certainly, the President gives a lot of importance to this subject, and certainly this was evidenced, as I mentioned before, in several incidents which occurred. On the other side, you see, what is important that these recommendations between the President be turned to action plans.
Yes.
You see, it's very, very important. And I suggest that we have a steering committee in order, but certainly in implementing these action plans, we'll have problems and obstacles. Certainly, having the mechanism in order to eliminate any obstacles which will take place is very, very important in order to succeed in implementing the recommendations which are taken by the President and by the President Macron.
Right. I'd like to thank you very, very much, Dr. Mostafa Tamam, Professor of Economy and Political Science. Thank you very much, sir, for your time and your insight and for joining us here on LTV International. Ladies and gentlemen, this wraps up our coverage. Do stay tuned for the hour's top stories coming your way at 2 p.m. Cairo local time.
Egypt opens up to the world. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi meets with world leaders.
وأعبر لكم عن خالص الشكر والتقدير على حفاوة الاستقبال وكرم الضيافة.
Reaffirming Egypt's vision, delivering our voice abroad.
لتطوير التعاون الثنائي الاقتصادي والعسكري إلى مستويات غير مسبوقة.
Discussing regional and international developments. Solid and strong relations on the path of partnership and development.